minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and this is my final review for Excellent Movies Dudes, focusing on the Wraithrustlers. The name of this faction is really hard for me to say, and I think that is unnecessarily complicated, so for any video that features this faction extensively, I will refer to them as the Ghost Facers, which is a much better name if you get the reference. The Ghost Facers are a twist on a base modifier faction in that they want their modifiers to be destroyed. They are also the first formalization of subtypes, which we have seen in Smash It before, but had previously relied on card names, which is hardly explicit and relies on translation. I think that subtypes are long overdue in their usage, but if used improperly, it can be a crutch. However, it makes perfect sense here, as it conveys exactly what is a Wraith and what is not. Organizationally, the Ghost Facers have three major categories: the Wraiths themselves, the ability to destroy them, and payoff for doing so. Sometimes these cards overlap. It's actually easier to start with the Wraith concept to understand this faction. A Wraith typically has two parts: an increase to the breakpoint of the base by 3, and a benefit to destroying it. Both of their double features are Wraiths. Librarian Haunt draws 3 cards, while the Demon Dogs has the Bandit Gambit to play a minion from your hand or discard pile. This is another use of the new storing mechanic, which makes the timing of the Wraith play really important. But I think that's why it is a Bandit Gambit, meaning that it is flexible to the point of being potentially detrimental. You could use it for recursion, which is the optimal play, but you could also use it in a lead-off capacity. I really like the fact that you could do either, as I've long said that Mechanic would benefit from this type of treatment. And it's an extremely safe play, because even if the action is destroyed, the minion gets played, regardless of who destroys it, because it has no concept of credit for the destruction. While the Wraiths themselves have their own dual benefits, stalling and payoff, the Ghost Facers further add to the payoff with several of their cards, beginning with their leader, Funkman. Because the breakpoint reduction removal is often terminal, Funkman can stretch the destruction farther by adding a temporary full moon effect. Should you not need it, Funkman can draw a card and his reaction is global, making him a great engine minion. This makes his special seem potentially excessive, as he has the ability to transfer an action on it to another base, but we will revisit that in a bit. Roy has 2 abilities: the ability to reposition one of your base modifiers to its base, and a benefit for destroying a Wraith that turn. Although Demon Dogs is capped at 3 power, Roy can be played after, and get the bonus power as the timing is reaction agnostic. Sometimes the payoff is linked to the source of the destruction. Unlicensed Nuclear Accelerator can destroy an action for a power counter on its minion. Ellen can actually invert the breakpoint modification. In addition to removing the Wraith's blockage, she further reduces the breakpoint by 3 for some great swings. You could also play an extra action when the Wraith is destroyed, regardless of how the destruction was triggered, but again we'll revisit that later. While the payoffs are certainly nice, adding a booster quality to your main game plan, this faction lives and breathes with its percentage of Wraiths, which is 6 out of 20, and the ability to destroy them, which is 9 total cards, although some of it is situational and some of it conditional. Watson, for example, can either get you the Wraiths you need to set up their plays, or be a source of their destruction. I think the flexibility is crucial, especially when Watson is used for Librarian Haunt. Whereas Slimy and Demon Dogs have abilities that are useful in a burst context, Librarian Haunt is much more of a mid-game play, and sometimes you need those cards sooner since this faction can be very drawer dependent. If you look at the 3 major subtype factions, they all have one thing in common: native recursion to their subtype cards. Ghost Facers are no different, but the recursion card is extremely potent and different from the other race. Ancient Sumerian God also increases the breakpoint by 3, but as a talent it can store a base modifier from your discard underneath it. Unlike the other race, the Sumerian God cares about leaving play, not just being destroyed, which means that it works for phase 3 discarding, as well as other means of leaving play like Llama. When it does leave play, those stored cards can be played 1 per base for a massive regeneration, whether they are the race or not, and a large part of the Ghost Facer synergy comes from exploiting this distinction. However, it's important to remember that this is their only recursion card for their actions. In fact, Ancient Sumerian God is an example that more than usual, the Ghost Facers need to be read extremely carefully as individual words matter. Almost always, you can only destroy your actions, however select key cards are capable of destroying any player's actions. Funkman can kick off any action and respond to any action, even though your main focus is on your own. Funkman can even react to the destruction of minion modifiers. Ellen can play actions repeatedly after a Wraith is destroyed, in an uncapped capacity, which can create some really crazy chains. Resurgence can destroy anyone's action and on any base, allowing for some surprise double scores or even preventing solos. You can stage a Demon Dogs on another base, destroy that in phase 3, and use that minion play, which on Demon Dogs is global, to play a minion on the scoring base. Many of these warding opportunities make me feel like the Ghost Facers have some singularly powerful cards, but my record with them is actually a losing one. Despite that, I still like them, and I think part of the balance difficulty comes from something I've learned the hard way. Stalling cards that aren't removal based are incredibly difficult to balance. How do you know if the stalling did anything? You basically need to ask the other players. Sometimes it will mean that they don't try. Sometimes they will still be able to overcome a Wraith by paying more and it doesn't hurt them. Sometimes it does hurt them and Wraiths lose the battle but win the war. Under these circumstances, it's easier to see why certain abilities might start getting crammed into each Ghost Facer card, especially because they are already draw order dependent. Out of all the doubled abilities, I prefer Watson because that extra destruction gives them a lot more breathing room because there are times when it feels like they run out of action destruction. I think it's really important to make sure that Ectoplasm 1 is one of the cards revived by the ancient Sumerian god. That way you can immediately destroy one of the Wraiths you unleash for a chain reaction. I don't normally recommend doing this, but I actually think it's best to try this faction specifically with a known powerhouse combo just to get used to their flow and see how much they rely on certain cards. After losing several games with them, I needed to see them work, so I played them with Wreck-It Ralph, and it was absolutely as crazy as I thought it would be. But beyond the consistent action destruction they bring, and the fact that Ancient Sumerian God can be triggered very well by Felix, I like a lot of the other things that this combo can do. You can use an escape pod to move a Wraith like Slimy, only to resurgence it for a surprise second score. Escape pod can also send 2 Wraiths into Ellen or save Ellen in an overspend, because Ellen is essential as the best talent-based self-destruction you have. Sergeant Calhoun is a great choice for Demon Dogs, especially since Demon Dogs can be a card that plays or triggers it. Mint's Eruption is very Ellen-friendly because you can build up a wall of Wraiths only to swap out for something smaller, then start blasting away. I think Ghost Facers enjoy spreading out anyway because it makes their breakpoint increases more meaningful instead of consistently offsetting them, and Slimy certainly appreciates the mobility. When it comes to making Ghost Facer combos, it's fair to ask what to bring to the table. I used to focus on Demon Dogs as a great source of replaying soldiers, but I kept picking them with draw order dependent factions and it made things a nightmare. Instead, I started giving them draw to mitigate their own dependency issues and focusing on light but impactful supplemental action destruction. Dragons met both of those criteria, with Imperial Dragons offering lots of draw potential and being a good Demon Dogs target. As another base modifier faction, Dragons can flank attack whatever Wraith they need, while also flank attacking Ectoplasm 1 to destroy a Wraith in play. I like how flank attack becomes either the source or the death of a Wraith. You can do some really crazy things with Burn It Down to remove all your Wraiths. I also found that Runes complements Breakpoint increase well because it is a deterrent upon deterrent, playing more than normal for less reward. Bring Down the Walls is really good for Watson, especially with the plays of Demon Dogs. With some setup in Ellen, it's possible to create some powerful phase 3 actions like an Unexpected Runes. If you did want to focus on Demon Dogs, the Tornadoes were a great choice because of the flexibility of Twister. It can be played anywhere and pull someone anywhere. Pulling a Roy brings over 5 if you play it at the Demon Dogs base, and because of the global play, it's easy to propel the Twister off the category 5. Like with Wreck-It Ralph, the Ghost Facers love spreading out, which Cyclones do well. You have the ability to pivot your Roys before they power up, and have powerful persistent specials for Ellen. Like with Burn It Down, you have access to mass modifier destruction, but Not in Kansas also destroys minion modifiers, which Funkman can react to. Something really nice about this combo is that they can invest Wraiths on a base to make it more expensive, but stay off of it completely, using Tornado specials to jump on at the last moment, especially if the Ghost Facers can move the Wraiths anyway. I really like making Ellen global with Monster Tornado, since it is very hard for this combo to add persistent power, leaving your biggest gun in a mobile state. Because Ellens are the focal minions of the deck, having consistent access to them is really important, and thanks to the kudzu, Killer Plants can provide that. Waiting 4 turns, which isn't hard with the Wraith stalling, can turn 4 power counters into 7 breakpoint power and an extra action. This combo has a lot of overgrowth shenanigans, including a surprise start of turn play. If you have a Sprout on a base with Ellen and a Wraith, the Sprout can turn into Watson, destroying the Wraith, granting a phase 1 action, which can be Overgrowth, which will trigger that same turn. You have 2 different ways of saving Overgrowth as well for Killer Plant Trucker style shenanigans. You can even recur it with Ancient Sumerian God. Add in one of the best budding choices in Ellen, and you get to play them for much of the game. And because this is just funny, I wanted to point out that the normally useless Entangled actually does something with Funkman after it destroys itself. I really like pivoting with the Sprout into Roy, pulling over a Wraith for an unexpected Wraith Blast because both Watson and Water Lily are surprise targets. You can also pull the Wraith off just to stop the breakpoint increase and not destroy it at all. In my game with them together, I never actually played a single Water Lily, and that may be a first for Killer Plants for me. Watsons do so much for this deck that I actually made sure to shuffle them back in with Kudzu because they are great Venus Mantrap targets when you are ready to burst. From a minion perspective, the Ghostfacers have a nice dichotomy. They get Wraiths, move them, destroy them, and achieve payoff for doing so. The biggest challenge is getting the cards in the right order, because while it's good that the Wraiths are subtyped, it's not easy for other factions to help in this regard. Just try copycatting any of their minions. Anytime a subtype faction is involved, the key is knowing when to acquire the subtype and when to leave it open. Did Roy really require Wraiths, or could it have been any action? It's tough to say. My biggest wish for the Wraiths was that they had diverse, interesting abilities on destruction, so I wish the stalling was more diverse as well, rather than a flat 3 across the board. It doesn't have to be power reduction, but it could have been various forms of area control or play suppression. I am still glad to see breakpoint increases like a first-class citizen of the game system. I think players will enjoy Wraiths because there's a challenge factor of what Wraiths to play, and more importantly, which ones to destroy in what order. More often than you think, I find myself needing to leave a Wraith out there during scoring, and I'm forced to take the chance on drawing cards I will draw into more destruction. What do you think of the Ghostfacers? And who will you char with them? Let me know in the comments. Next week, we'll be taking a look at Teens, which only have one card revealed, and Teens may or may not be the 100th faction. They haven't said either way. What I need you to do is let me know in the comments if you think being the 100th faction means anything special. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.